All right. Looks like people are starting to filter in. Cool. Okay. Hey, I see Lewis. I see Neele. I see other people starting to filter in too. Hello, everybody. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. Well, it's great to see people popping in. I'll give a few more minutes since we do want to have a live audience for the show. Um, not everyone runs until the top of the hour for their meetings. Sometimes they end up getting stuck somewhere else. So I'll give you guys a few minutes. But in the meantime, just pop in the comment section and tell me where you're joining from today. We'll see. We'll see where we're at in the world. Dallas, nice. Okay. And we've got Berlin, of course. Representation. Brilliant. All right. Well, this is a live show, so we might as well get started. It will also be recorded and available to folks to watch afterwards. So, welcome, ahoy, platform engineering friends, SREs, and all the other folks inside of the platform engineering space and tech explorers out there. So, welcome to Platform Pirates. This is Humanitec's brand new weekly live show. We're going to navigate the high seas of platform engineering with all sorts of ridiculous nautical jokes. I'm really excited for those. And our goal is to help you understand how to build a better internal developer platform, tackle the challenges that come with platform engineering initiatives, and really learn how Humanitec can help you do all of these things, as well as streamline your operations. So if you haven't seen me before, my name is Mallory, and I am the principal platform advocate here at Humanitec. I am also very much into the day-to-day with our customers, and I will be your captain on this voyage of the high seas of platform engineering. So what we're going to do today is kick things off with our very first episode. It's obviously at the very core of what we do here at Humanitec, and we're going to talk about the Platform Orchestrator. I am going to tell you a little bit about what it is, why you need one, and how it's going to help unify what you are trying to achieve with your IDP. But I also want to look a little bit at what we're going to do with this show. It's Platform Pirates, of course. So, like I said, lots of puns coming, and I want to hear from you. So, drop your questions in the chat or send them my way, mallory@humanitec.com, and I would love to get to them. The end of each show, I want to try and do an audience live Q&A, so please get those questions ready and get them in at the end. You'll have to forgive a little bit of the awkwardness of the first show. So you guys may have seen me do quite a few webinars in the past, and it's a very different thing to go from doing a webinar, which has slide content in it, as well as sort of a predetermined flow, into a show. So what I want to treat this more like is a casual conversation. I want this to be a podcast. I want this to be a YouTube show, something you can regularly check out and see what the Humanitec team is up to. So in that case, it means that the format is slightly different. So each week, I want to explore a different topic. Sometimes we'll be doing some interviews. I have some really exciting ones lined up that I will tell you about towards the end of this episode. And I also want to deep dive what is happening inside of the platform engineering DevOps communities. So we might talk about some news in this world. There's always lots going on, especially with how technology is changing these days towards AI. I think there's some really important conversations happening inside of this space. So I really look forward to bringing some of those to you. Okay, so the other thing that will probably happen in the future with this show as well is you will feel more like a Twitch stream or a podcast. Right now, we are testing how this works with Zoom, but in the future, I think I will look at a different platform that will be a little bit more friendly to this type of content. So stay tuned for that. And if you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see, just let me know. All right, so let's set sail here a little bit. Let me tell you a little bit about me and what I do, as well as how I got into this space of platform engineering. I think a lot of the time people wonder how I got here. especially if you go look at my LinkedIn, it looks a little bit like a long and winding road. So I want to give you a bit of background so you have some context. So I have been working in the technology sphere professionally for the better part of now 12 or 13 years. I'm afraid to actually check. It would make me feel old. But I've been programming since actually it's been 20 years, not so long ago that has passed. So I started as a hobbyist. I was very self-taught, have been most of my career, and actually was a PHP developer for most of my life. I still am, to be honest with you. I work when I do stuff for projects that we're working on here at Humanitec or my own side projects. I tend to work in PHP 8 and its variants, as well as Laravel, if you're curious. So I started programming as a teenager and started building online games and really got excited about the space as a whole. I used to sell those online games as well. So you could say I've had a few exits of my own over the course of the years. And those are the sorts of things I did while I was in school. And then ever since then, been working in the tech industry for the most part, with a few dives into the outside world, but I keep coming back. And one of the things actually that led me into working directly with customers was that I got frustrated as a full stack engineer trying to understand how to move from this world of just deploying to a LAMP stack somewhere with FTP into this world of cloud native and into this world of Kubernetes. It got very frustrating for me, and I ended up leaving the industry full time as an engineer and going instead into kind of technical customer success and customer enablement, which is what actually brought me here to Humanitec. Now, I have learned to love this world of cloud native and also appreciate the fact that it is complex. And a lot of what we do here at Humanitec is about taking that complexity and making it accessible, especially to folks like me that are frustrated with how challenging it is to not only stay on top of the modern way of building applications, but the modern way of deploying them. So that is a little bit about how we got here and how I got to this point. And why I wanted to do this show was to tell the stories of platform engineering, but also tell the stories of Humanitec. I think one of the coolest things about the day-to-day here is that we see real stuff happening when people implement the Platform Orchestrator and tools like Score into their internal developer platforms. It is really awesome to see how that change can go, not just from the technical organization, but beyond. And I know this is stuff we're going to talk about on this show for sure. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is specifically about platform orchestrators. And I want to just quickly go into the agenda a little bit before I go any deeper so that you have an idea of what we're going to cover today. So first things first is, what is a platform orchestrator and why you need one? So we'll look at that. And then I want to look at how we here at Humanitec offer the industry-leading platform orchestration solution. Definitely worth sticking around for. And then the last thing I want to do today before we get into some audience Q&A is preview of some upcoming topics on Platform Pirates. So some stuff that is coming down the pipe that you might find quite exciting. There are lots of interesting conversations I'm preparing to have inside of this space, but also am open to feedback. So feel free to send that my way. All right, let's get going and just start with talking about what a platform orchestrator is. So it's really important to be able to describe this visually, especially because a lot of folks listening to this might be on a podcast. What I want to do is try and paint a clear picture for you. It would be nice to be able to bring up slides, but folks that have the podcasting going and really want to listen to it obviously can't see. So I want to describe an internal developer platform to you and where a platform orchestrator fits in. So it sounds like a buzzword, but I promise you it's actually an important component. And when we look at what an internal developer platform actually is, you'll see how Humanitec fits into the center of it. The idea behind an internal developer platform, an IDP, is what we like to call them, is realistically to enable developers to do their work quickly and enable them to do their work well without bottlenecks, with streamlined automations, with a layer of standardization underneath that makes everyone else in the technical organization happy. It's about getting back to work, and it's about doing your job without having to worry about these complexities that I mentioned earlier. When we talk about internal developer platforms, we tend to divide them into different planes. So you may have seen the reference architecture diagrams on our website or around things like LinkedIn. And what those represent is the visualization of an IDP. The primary plane you will see is the developer plane, and this is where a developer interacts with the platform. This is through your IDE. It could also be through a portal like Backstage or Cortex or Port. And then there's underneath that this separation between two two segments of repository. So we have our application source code repositories, and then we also have our platform source code repositories. And I'll touch on that a little bit more about why that's so important. But what's really key to think about is our philosophy and the best practice in platform engineering is to separate these. I think we'll do an episode at some point about the separation of concerns between developers and operations folks, so that line between dev and ops, but this is one way to think about it. Developers need to focus on application source code, and platform teams need to focus on platform source code. Separate those out. It's much easier to manage in the long run. So that is essentially the developer control plane. That then feeds into the CI and CD system, so the delivery plane. And here is where we're going to start seeing stuff like GitHub Actions. This is we're going to start seeing stuff like Argo CD on the other side. What's important, though, is that the middle of this is a platform orchestrator. When we think about what an orchestrator does, it realistically is going to connect that platform source code repository with that application source code repository. So it's really the brain of an internal developer platform. Its job is to connect, standardize, and automate the interactions between the tooling in your space, the infrastructure, and the developer workflows themselves. It's what makes your platform more than just a collection of scripts, pipelines, Terraform configurations thrown all over the place. It turns platforms into an actual product that developers can consume. Another way to think about it is that a platform orchestrator turns products from a platform team or from an infrastructure team into a consumable vending machine for developers. So the vending machine would mean that a developer can go and select what it is they need out of that machine. It's prepackaged, it's ready to go. They can just hit a button and off it goes. So that's one way to think about the platform orchestrator. In reality, they're responsible for a couple different things. So some of the key things we think about a platform orchestrator is abstracting complexity. Developers don't need to worry about how the infra is provisioned, just that when they need it, they get it, and it's there for them when they're looking to access it. It's critically important. I always talk about abstracting responsibly. Abstracting for the sake of abstracting doesn't help anybody and doesn't do anyone any favors. So if you're actually thinking about abstraction in a logical sense, a platform orchestrator allows you to put a layer of abstraction in that isn't nonsense. It has a purpose. I will always tell people to abstract with purpose, and if you're going to do it, make sure there's a good reason why. Removing complexity is a great reason. The next thing that a platform orchestrator is really responsible for is managing the golden paths. So we will talk a lot about golden paths inside of this show, but we'll also talk about them all over Humanitec's website, materials, and documentation. A golden path is a road that a developer or any other person interacting with the platform can walk down, and it's an easy road to achieve an outcome. The goal is that it's a path and not a cage. So the incentivization is to stay on it in order to achieve an outcome. And generally, you can think of them as things like, when I'm doing the deployment, I need a new S3 bucket. That's a golden path. In a non-golden path scenario, you'd probably have to jump through some hoops in order to get that, including probably manually configuring it. In a golden path, all you would have to do is make a fairly abstract request and get that with your deployment. So when an orchestrator is going to manage golden paths, its job is to standardize those paths, as well as reducing the cognitive load for engineers, as well as platform teams in terms of not just accessing that golden path, but maintaining it. And that's critically important. It's a good segue into one of the other things that platform orchestrators are really responsible for, and that is the automation of the operation of the platform. and the infrastructure underneath. So you really are going to give yourself repeatability. Compliance and standards are easy to uphold here. And if you have a lot of governance inside of your organization or rules that you want to start enforcing, a platform makes this easy. It also means it's easy to understand and manage the life cycle of resources because ideally the orchestrator handles this for you. If you set a base set of rules and a base set of recipes for those resources, the orchestrator's job is to take care of the day-to-day with them. If you need to make an update, it should be easy. It shouldn't be having to edit 1,000 different config files. It should be one, maybe two, based on how you set up the orchestrator. The other thing we want orchestrators to do are bridge the gap between infrastructure and developer teams. And I sort of mentioned this earlier, that it is going to connect those two repository types, that the application source code and the platform source code. So the idea is that by bridging that gap and connecting those two repositories and effectively connecting those two teams in a easily collaborative way, developers get the autonomy to do what they need to do without breaking stuff and making those infrastructure teams very irritated with them. So that's really, really critical to think about too. So if you want to think about a platform orchestrator in the context of the platform pirates, or thinking about it in the sense of the nautical jokes that come around Kubernetes, you can think of it like the captain of your internal developer platform. So it's not replacing your infrastructure teams or your tools, but it's just going to make sure that everyone, including developers, works together seamlessly. Super, super important. And the way to think about how you implement it into your IDP is very similar. So when you're bringing in the captain, you need to make sure you're taking care of the highest priority things first. And we'll talk about that for sure inside of the context of this show. So I think that really sums up quite well what we want to do with a platform orchestrator and exactly what it is. But why do you need one? So that's a great question. And the problems you're going to run into when you don't have one tend to start coming when you really start hitting scale. So when you're a small team, you're maybe one or two developers, you might not hit these problems, but you can see them on the horizon. I will tell you though, even as a solo dev working on my own projects, I use a platform orchestrator. Why? Because I know that at the end of the day, if I need someone to come and help me work on something, or I want to bring in external help, it's going to be much easier to onboard them and get them working without having to worry about them breaking anything I've already established. In a larger organization, though, the problems you're going to run into are things where teams are relying on DIY scripts, ridiculous amounts of YAML, manual processes, tickets, like, hey, I need an ephemeral environment, takes you 3 days to get it. Not super ephemeral in that case. You don't get it when you need it, and you certainly can't shut it down when you need to. Other things that you'll tend to see is where developers needing to start learning too much about infrastructure, they slow down delivery, they break things. You know, most of us are really focused on writing application code. We aren't really there to write things like Terraform or to wrangle Helm charts. It slows down delivery. It increases the complexity of managing things. It even just increases the complexity of your day-to-day. And if you are one of those developers that also happens to moonlight as a DevOps person, you are going to be the one that's fixing all of that stuff. And that is the third problem, essentially, that comes with not having an orchestrator, is that there's no standardization. It's like spaghetti code. You're going to end up with a spaghetti platform that is ridiculous to maintain, and every single application, it's not clear where stuff is. It's not clear how it's connected. And it's a bit of the Wild West. And I've definitely seen that when I've walked into organizations and seen what the picture looks like inside of it. So that's all fine and dandy, but why the platform orchestrator, and how does it actually solve these problems? There's a couple different things to think about here. The first is that its goal is to simplify complexity. So provide clean, API-driven interfaces for developers. You can absolutely add portals on top, but I would always suggest starting with a backend and a strong API first. The portal is a wrapper on top of that API. And if you're able to actually build that API well, which is essentially what the platform orchestrator will give you, you're able to do a lot of powerful things with it. And this is something we will look at in a future episode. Platform orchestrator is also going to help you standardize workflows. So every team can follow the best practices without reinventing the wheel, without having to think about some special sunflower circumstance that they might have. The best practice is there, it's right in front of them, and it's the golden path that is easy to walk on. With that comes things like consistency and reliability. So it's a lot less about, well, it worked in my pipeline, or, well, it worked in our version of staging. Why doesn't it work in yours? There's also a level of automation that comes with doing that. When you automate and standardize things well, the consistency and reliability across environments becomes simple and easy. It also becomes much easier to troubleshoot. The last thing I want to touch on is developer productivity, and that what we tend to see is that a platform orchestrator enables developers to onboard faster, have a better experience, and be overall happier with what they're doing in their day to day. Like I said, part of the reason I stopped working as a developer full time was because this stuff was really frustrating. Um, there's nothing like imposter syndrome brought on by cognitive load. It is incredibly hard to face and deal with, and it's definitely something I hear from a lot of teams all the time, and I definitely see myself in it. So, with a platform orchestrator in place that takes away that complexity and ties those infrastructure operations layers to the developer layer without that interface being overly complex, it really, really helps. You can get back to writing application code, do what you're good at, and that's building stuff. So it's not just about theory. It's not just about sunshine and rainbows, technology and toys. Organizations that actually put a platform orchestrator into their platform reduce lead times. They increase how fast they're able to get things deployed, and they're able to scale their IDP across their organization. It is easier to get it beyond just that first couple teams that are excited about it and into an entire org when those layers of standardization and automation are in place, and you're actually taking care of things like complexity, consistency, and reliability. All right. I think we've covered quite a bit in that, but I really also want to touch specifically on Humanitec's Platform Orchestrator. It's why we're here. What makes us an industry leader in this space is we were the first ones to really, really tackle this problem. So we were the first ones to really look at the space of cloud native and say, what is going on here? What are the problems? And exactly how do we think about fixing them? We've identified a lot of the pain points that teams tend to face. So that cognitive load question, ticket ops, manual wait times, all of those different pieces are things that our team has identified and put into making this product what it is. Because of that, there are a lot of things that Humanitec does that are quite unique to it. And the first one, and probably what I like to call the meat and potatoes of it, is dynamic configuration management. So what you're able to do as a developer is just ask for what you need very abstractly, and Humanitec handles how it gets provisioned by referencing standardized configuration bases and lifecycle managing whatever that resource is that you've requested. So in a lot of scenarios with more basic platform orchestrators, what you will tend to see is that that resource has to either be already created and exist and be plugged into, or it is just created. That is it. Nothing else can happen with it. With dynamic configuration management, it is able to lifecycle manage the entire lifecycle of that particular resource. The other magic piece is that very abstract request of what you need when you need it. That is unique. And without the developer having to go in and specify a bunch of different things, it's much simpler. And what we'll actually do is get into some demos at some point in this show for that. And we'll make sure that the folks who are attending or listening through a podcast have a way of experiencing exactly what's going on in that demo. The other thing that makes Humanitec the industry leader in platform orchestrators is that this thing is pluggable and it's API first. So it's going to exist inside of your Kubernetes infrastructure in a very, very easy to work with way. So you're going to work alongside your existing infrastructure. You're going to be able to work with your existing Terraform, implement stuff like Argo, take a lot of what you already have and improve on it by adding this additional layer that helps connect all of the dots. What's also great is that we have a lot of automated workflows and policies. We have a lot of examples of this stuff too that allows you to start from scratch and really build what you want to build fairly quickly out of the box without having to reinvent the wheel. What also makes us really great in this space is that we've done this 1,000 times. So when you come to our team, you're not just getting a product, you're getting access to us and the experience we have inside of the platform engineering space. We have some really cool programs, including the Minimum Viable Platform program, that will allow you to start working with the Humanitec Orchestrator quickly and in a guided fashion. It gets you to showing value with your IDP very quickly and being able to see how Humanitec can really, really give you an edge. So that is something that we'll probably look at some point in the show too, but definitely worth looking at in a lot more detail. One of the things that's so beautiful about this platform orchestrator here at Humanitec is that it works with your existing tool set. It is going to make your existing infrastructure smarter. It's going to make your existing platform smarter. Um, and I think in a lot of ways, I tend to think of it as making the platform more accessible to your organization from the perspective of now everything is represented by an endpoint. And there's a lot of things you can start doing with that. And it's something we're going to start talking about in future episodes. All right. So that is just the beginning. We just explored the topic of a platform orchestrator, and we're really just scratching the surface of what Humanitec can actually do. So what I want to do is look at some of the future topics that we're going to talk about and go through a little bit exactly what you can expect from Platform Pirates in the future. I promise a lot more nautical jokes as we get a little bit more used to this format. And I probably will also come up with a ridiculous soundboard to make things easier. So our next episode will actually be looking at YAML itself and how kind of where it came from, how it's influential in this space, and how we have gone beyond that. So YAML is great, but it's also very frustrating. So our next episode is called Beyond YAML, Real-Time Dependency Mapping with the Resource Graph. So let's think about YAML as a tool and how we can simplify it and how Humanitec has simplified it and how we can turn it into something visual and elegant. So we're going to look at the Humanitec resource graph in the next episode, as well as a little bit about SCORE, which is our open source project. After that, so on the 12th of February, I'm really excited to do an episode called The Future of Humanitec with our CTO and head of product, Chris Stevenson. I'm really excited to interview him about what we are working on and what is coming next. So just a couple previews here. We are going to have conversations about non-Kubernetes orchestration, as well as features like fleet management, and deep dive a little bit into how we evolve the product and how we take the feedback from our customers and the folks that use this thing and make Humanitec better. Outside of that, I think we have a lot of good topics about different parts of the platform engineering space. So measuring success in platform engineering initiatives, I'm really excited to talk about that. Looking deeper at our open source CNCF sandbox project SCORE and kind of the genesis of that, where it came from and where it's headed. But I also really am excited to be doing some interviews with not just guest experts, but actual people who use Humanitec. So we'll be talking to folks like Simpress, aka Vistaprint, who use Humanitec to make their lives easier and to get things done faster. So I'm looking forward to showing those stories to you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or things you want to see or have us talk about, let me know. Would really, really love to hear from everybody on that. And looking forward to exploring that a little bit further. So before I open up for the live Q&A, I just want to thank everyone for stopping by for this first episode. It is short. Chances are we will be able to go a bit longer in future episodes, but for now, we're just getting started. So let me know if there's anything that you want to see and what we can help you out with. So I'll open up for some questions now if anyone in the audience has some. I know we have a small audience today, so no worries about that if there are no questions, but I will give a few minutes for that to pop in. Looks like we do have one question. So does it mean it, probably being the Humanitec orchestrator, provides images of Kubernetes or VMs with specific configs that developers have in CI/CD with drop-down lists to choose the platform? Not quite. So that is an abstraction you could build on top. Humanitec's job is to essentially connect all of these components inside of its interface. So when you think about how configs would essentially work in this case, the job is that the orchestrator says, hey, developer has asked for an S3 bucket and needs it in this context for this application. The platform orchestrator's job is to take that and to generate deployment objects as well as the resource graph, which we will look at in future episodes, and get that out into the Kubernetes runtime. When it comes to visualizing stuff, especially at a higher level, so let's say you want to scaffold an application, it is definitely something you can do. And we have customers that are doing this with tools like GitHub Actions, they're using Backstage. But what's happening is once that is triggered, Humanitec is also being triggered in order to deploy that base level of configuration that is requested inside of the developer's context. If it's a scaffolding situation, then it's probably also going to make sure that the repository is built and structured in the way that the platform team has standardized. And that's a big part of this process too. But that's a really good question. Now, there's lots of different things you could do with the platform orchestrator in that context. And I know you mentioned, Neela, in your question, specifically VMs. That is something that's coming. So you'll want to stay tuned to our third episode where we talk about the future with non-Kubernetes orchestration with our CTO and head of product. But definitely a fantastic question. Okay. Any other questions? Cool. It looks like, do we support all runtimes? Not yet. So that is something that's coming. Right now, we are really specialized in Kubernetes. And the reason why is we very much adopt the philosophy of get really, really good at one thing and then branch out into others. Kubernetes orchestration is a big topic. Kubernetes is great, but it is very complex for developers to figure out. So that was sort of the first thing that Humanitec took under its umbrella of doing exceptionally well. So we are looking to branch beyond that now, and it is something we'll talk about in our third episode, as I said, with our head of product and CTO, to look at a little bit about where we're headed with that and what the plan is there. So definitely pop by and come for that episode. Great questions. All right, let's see, we've got a couple others here. So Imran asks, I spoke about golden paths. This implies already known requirements. How does it support innovation where one size fits all doesn't work? Great question. This is where going through the minimum viable platform methodology, the program is the way to start. When you look at how you build a platform, the most important thing is understanding why you're building it and what you are trying to achieve by building it, the outcomes of that platform. So one of the things we do inside the MVP program is design the golden paths that are most important for your team at that stage. We also think about ones down the line. We think about stuff in the future. We want to make sure that we're not just building something that you can showcase now, but something that will scale. And one of the things we also do inside of the MVP is really understand the status quo of your organization, not just technically, but philosophically. What is the approach to change? How do people feel about it? How do they feel about their day-to-day now? And if we were to offer them an improvement, what could that look like for them? What it looks like in terms of already known requirements, so these are often more mature orgs that come in to do an MVP, is we're able to really get started quickly on building out those golden paths inside of the orchestrator and getting those ready to go for developers. So that could mean requesting a new resource type with a deployment. It could mean automatically promoting to a new environment. It could mean things like PR or ephemeral environments. Those are the types of things we tend to explore in that MVP program. One size fits all doesn't work, but I can generally put things into specific buckets. So what we normally see is that we're either dealing with questions of seeing value in standardization or in automation. And we can kind of put stuff into those buckets and look at things in improving one of those two outcomes. How does a platform orchestrator support innovation? Well, it gives you your time back. I don't know about you, but I am not very good at being creative when I am swamped with too much information, with a lot of things going on, and an overwhelming amount of complexity piling up on my desk. I really can't be creative inside that space and think about going outside the box or trying something new. So when you have time back, it's much easier to explore. It's much easier to see what you can do and maybe take a ticket that you might have to work on as a developer and approach it in a different way. It's about, you know, being more satisfied in your day to day and having that time back to not just do what you do best, but also live your life. One of my favorite stories about a Humanitec customer is one that came to me probably 6 months after getting the platform rolled out to most of the organization. He had been an SRE before, changed job title to platform engineer, and he said to me, I was able to go to my son's football game, soccer, for those of us in North America, the first time in years without my laptop and not being on call. And he cried. And it was really, really, really sweet. Um, and that's what I mean about innovation, because suddenly you can have your time back. You're not waiting on tickets. You're not doing 1,000 tickets of the same thing over and over again. And that is what I mean when I talk about that stuff. And those are the stories that we're going to bring you in this show. We're going to talk to people that have had that kind of experience with a platform with Humanitec at the center, and also talk to people who've been really lost on their platform engineering journey and come to us and found the light at the end of the tunnel. That wasn't a train. So definitely worth exploring, but great question for sure. Perfect. Okay. Well, looks like we're out of questions, but again, I want to thank you guys for stopping by. I know this is the first episode and it's got a little bit of growing pains, some awkwardness to it. And I appreciate you being patient and sticking by and also asking some great questions there at the end. So that's a wrap on our first voyage on Platform Pirates. So if you found anything today helpful, be sure to join us in the future. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us for more weekly deep dives into platform engineering with the Humanitec team. So like I said, next week we are going to look at the resource graph and what that means in our context and how that is an evolution of YAML and its friends. You're not going to want to miss that. It's going to be a really cool conversation. I think we will have some interesting stuff to dive into. And yeah, super looking forward to it. So until next time, keep on building, keep on automating, keep on platform engineering, and may your platform be seaworthy and may it always keep floating. So look forward to chatting with you guys soon. And thank you so much for joining us today on the first episode of Platform Pirates.